Repeatability is one of the unspoken superpowers in the trading card reselling space. I would argue reselling at large, regardless of the widget or item that you're looking to move. But today I'm going to talk about repeatability as it pertains to cards, grading companies, and selling platforms. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. Before I dive into the topic, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, it means a lot. You can also support the channel by submitting your cards for pre-grading at geminspector.com. With no further ado, repeatability I'll first define as the ability to be repeated. Okay, so that's how the etymology of the word repeatability breaks down. Able to be repeated, able to be done again. So we'll contrast that against like a single-use, one-time only moonshot play. So like a disposable play. A disposable play example would be, let's say that you had like a massive Wizards of the Coast collection that you accumulated during the years 2022 through 24, or even 2025. You bought a bunch of Wizards of the Coast stuff, and here we are, March of 2026. That stuff is gone bananas. So you're able to sell it all for an insane margin and sit fat and happy, right? So that's kind of like a single-use thing. And there's an asterisk next to both repeatability and this single-use example because everything is gonna work until it doesn't. So that's something to understand. Like Wizards of the Coast is hitting it really heavy right now. It could continue doing that, or it could crash, and then from there it could either bounce back or not bounce back. So there's like some optionality here. So take that for what it's worth. And the same is true for repeatability. It's like if you find a card that you can consistently arbitrage, it's going to work until it doesn't. And an example that I'll give is, so repeatability. On TCG Player, I found a Nami card from a starter deck that I was buying all day. Like, I think I ended up purchasing like 200 or 300 copies of this Nami card, and I was buying them for like $3 a piece because I could sell them on my eBay store for 12, and then 10, and then $8 a piece. And I've sold a ton through eBay and elsewhere. Like, I'll trickle them into my grading submissions at both PSA and CGC, stuff like that. So I'm like crushing my backlog of these cards, but that was like a consistently expected arbitrage opportunity. And the 10s sell more than raw plus grading fees. And so I'm jumping the hurdle each time. And so that is like a repeatable outcome. That card works because people like the fundamentals surrounding that character. They like the fact that it's a textured alternate art card, and big number in grading creates big number in bank account, right? So that's kind of like what's going on there. So when we're looking at like repeatable cards, you have to consider those types of things. So a repeatable arbitrage opportunity is going to net you a higher positive result if you're doing things like looking at popular characters as like the very bare minimum baseline. So if you're looking for a card to grade or a card to speculate on, you don't want to be going after something like Bane. You do want to be going after something like Umbreon. There's a clear difference in consumer demand between those two Pokemon. Now, I'm willing to bet that just the sheer amount of collectors in the Pokemon space, there's probably 100 people that love Bane. And, you know, that's a borrowed idea, okay? But we know that there's at least, 5 figures worth of people that love Umbreon. And so you want to go where the demand is on that, in that regard. So I'd rather be selling to a market of 40,000 people versus a market of 100 people. And I'll also take a side tangent here, side quest. That's why we choose Pokemon. That's why I'm not the #1 Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh seller on the market right now. Because I was selling Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I think they're awesome. I still have like a nice binder filled with them. But I'm not the #1 Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh seller because there's not that many people that care. I care about it. I think it's awesome. Almost nobody else does. But a ton of people, millions of people, love Pokemon. And so any given card in Pokemon performs better. And what I mean by that is it sells faster, sells more reliably, and usually for a higher price when comparing 1-to-1 than any given Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh card, okay? And so that's why people choose Pokemon. And that's something to consider when it comes to like you speculating in alternate TCGs right now and all that kind of stuff. So when you're looking for cards, you want to do that. And then it's also just like a metric of you have to try it to see if it's going to be repeatable or not. But there's some back end things you can look at. Like you can look at sales velocity on TCG Player, how many are currently listed versus how many are sold. Same thing on eBay. If you search the card, you can see how many active listings are available for that card. And then you can go to the sold page and find out how many have sold in the last 90 days. And you can see if that is good or bad based on the ratio between the two. So that's called the sell-through rate. In addition to that, if we're looking at grading, like I'll tell you a big reason why I'm doing like hundreds of cards worth of volume a month. I think right now I'm at like 150 to 200 cards a month. I would like for that number to go up, but I'm only doing like 50 cards through PSA a month. And that's because CGC is more repeatable right now. They're turning cards around faster. Their grading parameters are more consistent at this time. And so you kind of know what to expect. And so, if I do really well with the card in Pristine 10, and I do pretty good with the card in Gem Mint 10, and there's a lot of gradable copies of that card available on the market, well, I'm going to continue buying those until one of two things changes. Either until the card becomes less available, more expensive, supply and demand, or I see like a much worse grading result or like demand on the purchasing side of the graded card in the conditions that I'm aiming for. And so long as those things are all met, that's a repeatable process. Whereas at PSA right now, there are immensely long turnaround times. And so you really never know, I have like 4 active orders at PSA right now, let's say. Well, I'm sending a PSA submission like bi-weekly. And so I had a submission that I sent off in February, and then I still had my last January submission. Well, the whole time that they were in the grading process, the one that was from February was tracking ahead of schedule compared to the one from January. So what I mean by that is that the February one, which I submitted later, it was received later, it was in QA checks while the January order was still in the grading stage. And so like they don't do first in, first out, like all that type of stuff. I ended up getting the January one back, which side tangent again, kind of makes me think that the whole tracker checking thing, maybe people have a point because I have no idea if that's even true or not. Like we have no way of knowing if our card's in assembly or not in assembly. They could just be clicking buttons. Anyway, you can get your cards back faster at CGC, so that's repeatable. That allows it to become repeatable. And then also, like I shared in Professor Oak's Discord recently, a Pikachu from Crown Zenith that was well-centered with no whitening that got a PSA 8. And so at CGC, the odds of something like that happening are so much less than at PSA right now. Like randomly at PSA, you just get weird grades. At CGC, you do sometimes, but not often, and it's less consequential. Because when I'm submitting through Fanatics, which you can do through me at geminspector.com for $9.50 a card, which is 50 cents cheaper than the publicly available rate, it's like, okay, I'm in that card for $9.50. If it goes bust, I'm out that much money. Whereas I'm submitting all my PSA cards at $50 a pop right now. So that Pikachu, which it was like $40 at the time, so hold your breath. But like that Pikachu, I'm out like 40 or 50 bucks on that PSA 8 just in terms of the grading fee. Okay? And so that's a much harder hit. I could fail 10 times at CGC. No, sorry, math, tough, long day. I could fail 5 times at CGC for every 1 failure at PSA. Think about that. The amount of grace opportunity in that is an insanely asymmetric proposition. So the failure rate and the failure, like the damage inflicted or damage incurred from failing at CGC is so much less than at PSA. But I'll add that in many cases on like the higher end cards, you're gonna do way better with a Gem Mint 10 from PSA than you would from a Gem Mint 10 at CGC. So that's kind of like the balancing act, right? But in terms, grading at CGC right now, call me a CGC shill, but it's a more repeatable process. And so that's why I'm sending more cards there. And then what was the other thing I was going to talk about? Selling platforms. Okay, so repeatable processes. Well, when we look at the main 2 sales platforms for trading cards, TCG Player and eBay, well, they're co-owned. And so when we take a real look at this and step back, it's like TCG Player does a nice job of making like that little graph that everybody likes to look at, and it kind of gives you the idea that you're paying a fair price or not paying a fair price. eBay requires a little bit more legwork. Like, you have to go into sold listings and see if the price that you're paying is similar to the price that it most recently sold for. And so there's a little bit more legwork there, but let's not be, deceiving here. Like, eBay has some inherent advantages that allow it to be a little bit more replicable, or repeatable. For example, on my eBay store, since I have like an established store with top rated seller status, and I know how to like boost the algorithm there, I can actually sell cards for slightly above market price. And since I'm primarily doing ungraded cards, not only am I able to sell above market price, but I can also often get bundle deals where people will just buy multiple cards from me above market price. And then also the negotiation factor, people like to get a good deal. And so on eBay, they can message you and you can work out a deal pretty seamlessly. And then you can either outright give a deal to somebody or the illusion of a deal. If you have a card listed at a price and it's selling for X price and they offer you something in between, you're still winning. And so that's nice. And so both selling platforms, TCG Player and eBay, have their own inherent repeatability standards and metrics. And so I think that they're both good options, and that's probably why they've continued to thrive, even though other platforms like Whatnot and, people live streaming directly through YouTube also exist. So in terms of selling platforms, we've kind of got it lucky. What's less repeatable than both TCG Player and eBay is Facebook Marketplace or Facebook groups at large. If you're trying to primarily sell through there, it's going to be difficult because you're pitching to a more shallow audience. Some of the bigger Facebook groups that I'm in have, and I'm spitballing numbers here, let's say they have 43,000 people. Well, out of 43,000 people, maybe you get 100 or two that actually interact with your listing. Some of those people are going to laugh react you. Some of those people are going to message you and waste your time. Some of those people are going to have the intention of buying the card, but they will definitely try to haggle with you. And they're going to cite that you're not paying, eBay fees and all that jazz as an advantage in their favor. And so that's a lot more hassle. And so when we compare that experience to TCG Player and eBay, you're pitching to a far more shallow audience. And then also, you have a time loss that is exponentially greater than the platforms like TCG Player and eBay, even though they charge you final value fees. And so that's why all the big businesses that you know about have eBay stores, have TCG Player stores, or sell through them. Even if people don't want to have their own eBay or TCG Player stores, they're probably consigning cards through someone who does. Because it's a lot more repeatable, because you're pitching to a larger audience, more sales data, less finagling. And so the least repeatable way to sell your cards is through Facebook Marketplace. The most repeatable is through something like eBay and TCG Player. The most repeatable place to grade your cards currently is CGC. The most repeatable IP to be selling right now is Pokemon. And so if you are grading Pokemon cards through CGC and either selling them through Fanatics, which is pretty repeatable. I mean, it's just what PWCC used to be. Pretty repeatable. If you're grading through CGC and selling on eBay, pretty repeatable. I mean, that's just kind of what it is, folks. Do the things that are repeatable, because if you can make money more often, you're going to have more money than if you make money less often. And you can take that one to the bank. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.